No, okay, let's go ahead and get started. Shiva?
Commissioner Adaro?
Here.
Commissioner Kasher?
Here.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Here.
Commissioner Wynn? Chair Remke?
Here. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to start with any public comment for an item not on the agenda. Okay, I see none, so we'll move right in to approval of the minutes. And commissioners, because there are 4 of us in 3 different places and the phone issue, I'm going to ask that we be a little bit more formal today and that you request and wait to be recognized to start speaking. I'll try to be aware and wait to make sure you're done before someone else starts speaking, because otherwise I'm afraid we'll be talking over each other and not hearing things, okay?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Wasserman. May I make a statement?
Yes.
Yes, and I just wanted to state for the record that I posted the agenda here at the LA County Law Library, and there are no members of the public present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything from you, Commissioner Kasher?
Madam Chair, if I may, wanted to thank the City of Oakland and the Oakland Public Ethics Commission for hosting me here at City Hall. Likewise, a copy of the agenda is posted. There are no members of the public here with me at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now for item 2 and the January committee meeting minutes. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or corrections? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of the January meeting.
A second?
Commissioner
Second.
Is that Commissioner Kasher?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Adaro?
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher?
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Yes.
Chair Remke?
Yes.
This motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, that passes. So we will move to the enforcement matters, and Ms. West will come up. And those are items 3 through 30. Would any commissioner like to take any item off consent? And I'll start with Commissioner Odero.
Yes, please. I would like to take 4, 5, 6, 14, 15, and 17 for the reason that I'm a partner at the law firm Paul Hastings, and it appears we may represent Sandra Thompson. I am not sure. I ran out of time to determine that. So out of an abundance of caution, I'm just going to recuse myself. If there's any discussion of that, I'll leave the room.
And that's just as to item 17. The others are being pulled for other reasons.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Kasher, any items for you?
No items to pull from me.
Thank you. Commissioner Wasserman.
Madam Chair, thank you. Item 23, and I don't have anything else to pull, but I do have a question, like a run through on item 3.
Okay, sure. I have none, so we will go ahead then and start with questions or comments. And Commissioner Wasserman, go ahead with item 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was hoping to get just a little clarification here, because I guess what happened in item 3 was, although there was a request for advice back in 2011, what we ended up with was still ended up being in a violation of the Act. How do the future potential respondents avoid this kind of scenario?
Ms. West?
Galena West, Chief of Enforcement. I think that this is a great example of how all the divisions work together. So when legal division writes a letter, they write it based on the facts presented as they know them at the time. And it's hard, I don't even know where to look. So, and so they write the letters on the facts that are presented to them. And then if the situation changes, if the facts are different than what was presented to them, or if the requester goes beyond those facts, then they should know they're not covered by the advice that's provided. The advice letters by the legal division are very specific on this point. and provide the advice regarding the facts as they're provided to them. In fact, they refer back to an opinion in Ray Thorner that talks about them not being a fact finder. And so I think that as I think your question is, as a going forward, how does this give people clarity? I think the clarity is you request advice with the facts that you want to act upon, and then you will have the immunity from the advice letter function.
But in this case, it's clear or fair to say that the issue was that the requesters went beyond the facts they provided and or just did not comply with the facts as provided to the legal division.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner
And
Wasserman,
one other,
go ahead.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
One other comment is I appreciate the discussion on page 5 of the exhibit where you indicate that while the Central Committees technically committed violations of the Act by reporting to have made the contributions at issue without identifying the fund, you indicated that the Central Committees reasonably relied on assurances from the fund that fundraising structure complied with the Act. And I think that was a commendable exercise of discretion.
Thank you.
Anything else,
That is all.
Commissioner Wasserman? Okay, thank you. Any, Commissioner Kasher, anything for you on item 3?
No.
Thank you. Okay, is any public comment on item 3? Seeing none, is there a motion?
This is Commissioner Kasher. I move to approve item 3.
I actually don't know why I just did that. I take it back because it wasn't pulled from consent. Sorry. We're just asking questions, so I'll just move on. Is there another item?
Are we voting on the consent calendar?
At first, I'm just going to finish
Minus-
with, are there any questions for from the commissioners for items that are still on consent, but they're just questions?
None from me.
None from me.
Commissioner Wasserman, any other questions?
Gavin Wasserman, I have no further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so
This is my mistake. I meant to mention that we will be removing item 25 from the consent calendar. We have reached a subsequent agreement with Mr. Hodge, and we will be removing it as a default presented to the commission. Other than that, I have no other comments on the consent calendar.
okay, just I'm gonna make a motion. Well, now, sorry.
I
I'm
apologize.
sorry, I'm messing everyone up here. Any public comment for any items on the consent calendar? Still seeing none. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve the consent calendar items 3 through 30 minus 4, 5, 6, 15, 17, and 23.
And 14.
Oh, wow. See? 4, 5, 6, 14, 15, 17, and 23. Did I miss anything? Okay, so the
Do we
motion,
need
25.
Madam Chair? Yes, thank you.
in which one?
25.
Someone else want to take over? Okay, and 25. I'm gonna read the ones pulled from consent one more time, and then I'm gonna pause and make it be corrected. 4, 5, 6, 14, 15, 17, 23, and 25. Okay, so the remaining consent items I move to approve.
Second.
Yes, I second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes.
This motion passes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now we will take the items pulled in order, starting with item 4. Commissioner Odaro, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. So actually, kind of in my mind, item 4 and item 5 kind of go together because they're both campaign reporting. And I see, I'm sorry. Item 4 and item 6, Mendez is item 6. Because I see some similarities there. And so I want to kind of try to work my way through these and the questions altogether.
So
Um,
so 4 and
Six.
6. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So first off, I want to raise the issue of the email that was received by the commission today, right before the meeting, from Gary Richard, in which he attaches an article that contains statements that Gary Gaylord made. And I have a question about it. Well, actually, no. I think my question's been, I kind of answered it myself. So does anybody on the phone have any questions about this letter that was received? Okay. So on number 4, we have 2 counts of pre-election campaign reporting missteps and 2 counts of semi-annual, I guess, campaign reporting. And the proposed fine for these is $2,000 for the 2 pre-election reports and $1,500 for the 2 semi-annual reports. And I have several questions, but I want to start with, I'm wondering if you can explain the difference between these 2 in light of the comparator Art Brown, who was charged a penalty of $2,500 each. And if we get to Mendez, was charged $2,500 for one that was late and $5,000 for the 2 that weren't filed at all. And I'm just wondering.
Can I get clarification? You referenced is that a case on this agenda or from a prior agenda?
Gaylord?
No, the Brown. You said
Brown is the comparator in the report.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Art Brown.
Sure. Galena West, Chief of Enforcement. So Art Brown was given as a comparative example. It was given because it was similar in amounts that were spent, but it was different in that Art Brown had a history of violating the act and was very sophisticated as a filer and campaign participant. So with his history, his fine is higher because that is one of the prior violations in the same genre that we take into consideration. For Mr. Mendez, we consider 84211 or disclosure violations different than 84200, which is not filing. So we differentiate versus did you file and make mistakes, or did you not file at all? Did you file late but there weren't mistakes? So we kind of have different categories of campaign non-filers or campaign non-disclosures. So like when you look at the streamlined sections, there's a section for non-filers and then a section for non-reporters. And in the streamlined memo, there are different fines as well. So like, for instance, if you don't file your SCI, your statement of economic interest, your first amount that you could be charged is $200. Whereas if you don't disclose something on your statement of economic interest, it's $100. So it's been decided over the years that it's less harm to make your mistakes, but still try to file and try to make some sort of on top of that has not filed at all and not participated in the process. So the default fine is higher because if you correct your filings and you take responsibility for your actions and you say that I did do this and you participate in the process, then the fine is not as high as if you don't participate at all and you don't bring your filings up to date.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Then next question I have is about the mailer.
Okay.
So how do you compare the issue of Mr. Gaylord, who had one mailer and is being fined $1,500, to the comparator Sue, who had 3 mailers and was fined $3,000? And what I read was, so that to me is $1,000 each.
Mm-hmm.
And what I read was Sue had no mitigating circumstances, and Mr. Gaylord had, I think you tried to characterize this as a mitigating circumstance, the fact that he posted his picture on Facebook
With the mailer.
with the mailer. So, frankly, I don't agree that that's a mitigating circumstance. I don't know anywhere that says if you post a picture, then check, you're okay. And I'm serious about
Mhm.
that, especially for people like me who don't look at Facebook. And I know I am among the few and far between that are left in the world. I get that. But, the fact is, I don't consider that a mitigating circumstance for Mr. Gaylord. So
Can I just, is it at all the idea about intent to conceal versus sloppy disclosure? And is that fair to describe why that was considered at all, the Facebook? Because I agree, I don't look at Facebook, but I'm just assuming that the idea there is that he wasn't hiding who he was. Like, we had a different guy who used a fictitious name. So
Right. And that's exactly what it is. It's not necessarily the circumstance that it was a picture on Facebook. It's that almost his entire campaign was done through Facebook, and all of his followers were on Facebook, and he wasn't hiding his identity or intending to conceal in any way, and took responsibility for the mailers publicly multiple times in different fashions. So whereas in other cases, when there's an intent to conceal who they are through the mailers and not putting their disclosure or putting false disclosure, then we take those in consideration. We consider those the spectrum.
Yeah.
With the Sioux case, I believe those were mailers that were sent to a specific community, and they were in different forms, but all sent within a relatively short time period and part of a newsletter. And all in, I believe they were in Mandarin, and Mr. Sioux had no experience with the act and had no experience with any kind of mailers, and just thought he was helping out to pitch in to pay for something. So some of the circumstances in the Sioux case were a little different in that we didn't want to completely shut down the participation in the process. And so the mailers were charged as one, but at a higher amount, because they were all sent in a very short time period, and all with similar materials.
So then I want to bring in number 5,
Sure.
which is Mr. Horner, who also is super unsophisticated.
Mhm.
And we talked about him last time, and I know we'll be returning to him. But he was fined $2,500 for the same transgression as Mr. Sue, who, I guess if we accept what you're saying, and I don't know one way or the other, so I have no reason to not accept, Mr. Sue is unsophisticated, Mr. Gaylord is more sophisticated, I guess, but Mr. Horner is equally unsophisticated.
Yet also had an intent to conceal by having the facts that we had presented regarding his fictitious address, and trying to proactively conceal his identity. And since that is one of the factors in the regulation that we consider, we take that seriously.
So you're saying that the anyone but whatever the name was
Steele.
is Steele. Anyone but Steele is a proactive, affirmative effort to conceal his identity compared to what did
No, he had
Sue?
a
I believe he
fictitious
actually
address,
did
sorry.
fictitious
Oh, that's right,
address,
that's right. He had
and
that's
yeah,
right.
and so his sender ID was actually purposefully incorrect.
Okay,
And misleading.
not a fair comparison then.
Right.
I take that back.
Okay. Okay, good.
And he waited to go through the default process as we discussed last time. So yeah.
Okay, that's it. That answers the questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So that was, let's continue to go with any more questions on number 4 from the commissioners? I'm just
Madam
gonna,
Chair, Gavin Wasserman, I do not have any questions.
I'm sorry, did you have a question, Commissioner Wasserman?
No question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment on item 4? We do have the letter that everyone has received and has been posted. Okay. Other than that, seeing none, is there a motion on item 4?
Mr. Wasserman, I move approval of item number 4.
Second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Rumkey.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move to item number 5, and I'm going to start with you again, Commissioner Odero.
Okay, so we went through this last time, so I have no intent on rehashing any of that, but I do have a couple of questions. In the report, there is a comparator, Port Hueneme, which the report says is similar to this situation. Was Port Hueneme not a default?
No, it was not.
That's it then. Thank you.
Commissioner Kasher or Wasserman?
Madam Chair, this is Gavin Wasserman. I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Ms. West and Enforcement for working with the respondent in this matter.
Certainly.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kasher?
No comment for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on item 5? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move approval of item 5.
I'll second that. This is Commissioner Wasserman.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Rumkey.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay, we're moving to item 6, the Mendez matter, which is a default decision and order. And again, just for the record, we did receive a comment on February 2nd, and that's been posted. And I'm assuming all the commissioners have received that. Let me know if you have not. We'll pause. Okay, so
Madam Chair, this is Gavin Wasserman. I did receive a comment letter from the respondent. Unfortunately, where I'm at, because of the technical difficulties, I cannot access it to refresh any recollection. But so if it is discussed, I may need some folks to quote it. Thank you.
okay.
I will rehash it for you with my rebuttal.
No, we won't get into a rebuttal just yet. We'll, Commissioner Odero, did you want to start?
So the questions that I had originally, you answered, took care of it. I just now have questions about this letter.
Okay.
So the third paragraph says, I've communicated this to various representatives from the LA County Recorder's Office and the Fair Political Practices Commission. What is he referring to?
I'm glad you asked. Galena West, Chief of Enforcement. We have had no contact with Mr. Mendez. In fact, he has been contacted from, I wrote down my cheat sheet number, 2014 to currently to January 26, 2017 was the last contact where we had attempted. We served the accusation to him at the board that he sits on to try to get him to communicate with us. And we have never had any contact, no response to voicemails. As far as I know from LA County, they also have been unsuccessful to get any contact. So I am unclear on what he's referring to or who he would has spoken to. Only 2 people in enforcement have worked this case, and neither one of them have ever spoken to him.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one other question. He says, I have read that the FPPC wishes to make me an example for many Latino elected officials in the Southeast Los Angeles County communities that are out of compliance. Do you know what that's about?
No, in fact, I even reviewed the press articles to see if there was anything that was said. And as you know, our press office is very thorough and doesn't speak on the settlements that are pending before you. And so I was very confused by it. And again, I asked the people that had ever been assigned to the case if they had made any comments, and none had.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Kasher, anything for you on item number 6?
No comments from me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, Ms. West, this is a respondent who is currently in office and has held office for several years, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I don't really see, and I'm going to have to act on my recollection, but I don't recall seeing anything in his last communication that suggested that there was any real attempts to from someone at his level of sophistication to bring this to a close. There still has not been any real contact other than this this letter with the allegations that Commissioner Adaro questioned about. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I would also like to point out, we checked with the clerk today to make sure that he had made a good faith effort by coming up to date with his filings. He has not. He also has another referral that we received from LA County because he ran for the water replenishment district in the 2016 November election, and he has not done any filings for that either.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that particular fact. I'm not sure if it would affect anything except for the fact that I think I had previously recused myself or abstained from matter involving candidates, successful or unsuccessful, for entities in which I had been involved in legal transactions in the last X number of years. So I think I don't have any material financial interest in the water replenishment district, though I did do some legal work related to a bond issuance many years ago. So I think I will stop my participation and simply abstain.
Okay, that case is not before you today. That is a separate case with a separate case number.
Yes, Ms. West, but I'm just going on the basis of that information indicates that this individual has some sort of relationship to that entity for which I would generally abstain.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
Oh, I do. One more. I apologize. But so with respect to just the timely payment of the fees, for 2 counts, it's $3,000 each, correct?
Correct.
So the comparator for that is Baca del Rio, who was, as we've said, the
Not a
epitome
real
of
comparator.
egregious, right? But she was fined $2,000
In a
per
stipulated
count.
settlement.
Yeah.
Right. When she came to the table
okay.
and the default for, I believe everyone inhaled a bunch of air when we charged the annual fee of $5,000 in the Baca del Rio default. And then in the in the stipulated settlement, it was $2,000.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the public regarding item 6? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move approval of item 6.
Second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes.
This motion passes.
And the record will reflect that Commissioner Wasserman abstained. Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and next is item 14. And I don't know who asked for this. Do you want to start?
I did,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
And this is another joint, let's talk about them all together, 14 and 15. Because again, these are late or failure to file statement claims. Yes, 14 and 15. 14 is NEF, 15 is gut stinker, I think. So I put all of these together, both of these together, I should say, along with the various comparators, and they're all defaults. And I am seeing some differences, and I'm just wondering, do we attribute substantive difference to the different types of statements? So the initial, so there's 3 types, right? There's the taking of, assuming, there's the annual, and there's the leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So do you see those as different?
We
And
do.
how?
We do generally. Generally, the annual is the one that almost all enforcement cases are focused on. Having people file annually while they're in office is one of the most important parts of the Streamline program, as well as the defaults, to try to get people's attention to get them to file. So we do see the annuals as the ones that are the most of the linchpin to keep the system working. The leaving office statements have always been seen as lesser because you're no longer in office. And the assuming office is generally also considered slightly lesser because you've usually filed an annual after your assuming was due to cover most of the disclosure that was needed from the assuming, or you've remedied it in some way by you filed your annual, but you covered it with a little extra time period. So generally, it's the annual statements that we throw the book at, so to speak, to try to get people to come up to speed with while they're in office to file the disclosures in order to make sure that there's no conflicts of interest. That's kind of the breakdown. So did you want me to go through the two cases?
Well, yeah, in a second. But so the assuming is, the leaving is the least worst.
Mhm.
The assuming is the next, but only because we assume, a different type of assume, is that the annual corrected it. So if there is no annual after an assuming,
Mhm.
then the assuming is bad,
Right.
is as bad as an annual
Right.
missed, right? Okay, got that. Thank you. And obviously a late statement is better than no statement at all. Right? Okay, so can you put together how these are different? We have in number 15, Gottstinker, we have an annual statement that was late.
Mhm.
So that was $3,000. Then we have in NEF, we have, I think the first one might be an annual, an assuming statement. Is 2011 assuming for this person for NEF?
She took office November of 2010. So her
this would be assuming.
would be her assuming, and then she left office June 2015.
Right. So 2011 was an assuming, 2012
Mhm.
was annual, 13 annual, 14 annual, 15 leaving,
Mhm.
right?
That's my
So
understanding.
all of those, they were failure to file. So yes, worse than Gottstinker, right? Which was a late filer. But all of those got the same value.
Sorry, the 2011 was an annual.
Oh,
If
okay.
we look at count one, it says the 2011 annual due by April 2012 was not filed. So it's for the full year. Sorry. I just
Okay,
wanna make sure.
understood.
All right.
So we have 4 annuals and 1 leaving statement.
Yes.
And is there a reason that can you kind of put together why it is that in NEF, the fine or the penalty for not filing the leaving statement is the same?
It's true. I think with NEF, it was the overall aggravating circumstance of being in office from 2010 to 2015 and never having filed a single statement. So while we didn't max fine her, it was something that she was a former board member. The filing officer was very frustrated and couldn't do anything to get her to pay attention to file the statements. So although we sometimes file max fine for annual statements, since she is currently out of office, that's what $4,000 was. And for the leaving office, it was the aggravating circumstance of not filing any statement the entire time for the 5 years that she was in office.
So it's the same kind of non-disclosure as the annual because we know
Right.
nothing.
And it was for over half of a year.
So my only question, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My only question on this one was why we didn't do 5,000 for each count as we have. And so the answer to that is because she's out of office now.
Correct.
Okay.
That would be the only reason.
Okay.
So these comparators, Medina was still in office at the time. I mean, I don't know if you can,
Medina.
if you know off the Medina was a comparator for Gottstinker.
Oh, okay. I looked at the right one.
See, because Medina was charged 5,000 each. One was assuming and 2 were annual.
Mhm. It's a sitting member.
Okay, so
Mhm.
Medina was sitting.
Mhm.
Tate.
Tate was a dispute of fact where he had filed everything after that date and had always insisted he had filed it, but refused to refile it. And the clerk insisted they had never received it. So since it was a dispute, we took that in consideration.
Matlock. He's a comparator in 14.
Okay. Matlock was currently in office, so it was
I'm impressed with
5,000.
your memory recall.
I know.
Ms. West.
I know.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
And
And
then
then
Yoder?
Yoder was a former member.
And he was assuming, that was an assuming
Right.
office.
So that seemed very much on
Okay.
point.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it for my questions.
Okay,
Thank
so that's 14 and 15. I'll take one at a time. 14, Commissioner Wasserman, anything from you?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Kasher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No question. Just wanted to compliment Galena on her memory and her knowledge of all of these cases. I'm really impressed by that. And thanks for your your work on this.
Okay,
Thank
any
you.
public comment on item 14? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move approval of 14.
Second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay, and then on item 15, did commissioners have any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Are there any public comments on item 15? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move approval of 16.
15.
Sorry. Okay, let me try that again. I move approval of 15.
Second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay, the next is 17, and that was just pulled because Commissioner Odero is recusing herself. Do the other commissioners have any questions or comments? And she will leave the room if so.
No, Madam Chair.
No.
Okay, is there any public comment on item 17? Seeing none, I move approval of item 17.
Second.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay. And then the next item is item 23. And did you want to start? Who would like, commissioners, any questions on item 23?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Wasserman?
Ms. West, part of my technical difficulties mean that I've only read a portion of the comment letter, and I've read the sort of narrative from Mr. Egan, but I did not get a chance to read his attachment, which involved at least it's described as the original complaint. But I do see that in the stipulation, there are the indication that on the facts available to the commission, there was found no evidence of a conflict of interest resulting from this interest. And if I recall correctly from the communication in the comment letter, that was sort of the gist of his concern. That, of course, the time it takes to investigate. Did you have any sort of clarification response to the comment letter?
Sure. Galena West, Chief of Enforcement. Our investigation did take a while because this was a property rights dispute, and there was litigation attached to it, as well as water rights and different issues. So it was pretty interesting, and it came to us by way of a CC of a letter to the board itself, the Honey Lake Valley Resource Conservation District. So not your typical complaint in a complaint fashion, as opposed to a recitation of facts of what's happening in a local jurisdiction. And as you know, local jurisdictions can get very contentious, and so we take a step back and gather all the facts ourselves, and we've found no evidence of a conflict within 12 months of the decision, an economic interest that would cause a conflict.
I see. And so what we're looking at here, although what we see in front of us is a streamlined violation, you're saying that the complexity of the facts around it and the dispute are what meant that this case would take perhaps a little bit longer than your average economic interest reporting streamlined case.
That is correct. And we're even going to be making a recommendation to the legal division for maybe a form change instruction construction change order a reg project in the future as a result of some of the research that we had to do in this case.
Regarding
okay.
property/water rights, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, because now that the communication from Mr. Egan was entered into the record, I just wanted to touch on those couple of questions, because while we have confidence that things were done diligently and proceeded as the facts led, I just wanted to make sure that on the record that we addressed those concerns, and I think they have been addressed. Thank you, Ms. West.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kasher, anything from you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions for me.
Okay. Any public comment on item 23? Seeing none, I move approval of item 23.
Second.
Second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay. Thank you.
And that will be a big on the record. Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move to item 31, the legislative update. Phil Long. At this point, I think it's still safe to say it's early in the process and not much has happened yet.
That is correct, Madam Chair. I do want to point out to the commissioners that since the notice of this staff memo, 7 more pieces of legislation have been introduced for a total of 11 that we are now tracking that would directly amend the Political Reform Act.
Okay, so we'll see all 11 on next month's agenda.
Absolutely.
Okay, with
If
any
not more,
updates
because
as far
tomorrow's
as-
the introduction deadline, so the legislature will likely introduce more.
Okay, great. Commissioners have any questions for Mr. Ong?
Madam Chair, I have one question.
Okay, Commissioner Wasserman?
Mr. Ong, I read a comment letter from Ms. Grindle, and the piece of legislation that she's focusing on, and again, unfortunately now I cannot access it because of the technical issues over here. She seems to be focusing on the ability of a public entity to make a mailer that includes a public official who is a candidate in the upcoming election. Is she referring to, and I don't even recall right now which piece of legislation that was, whether it's that mass mailing one. Is that a piece of legislation that is focused primarily on that, or is it broader and reach other prohibitions?
The bill that she's referring to is Senate Bill 45, which is that mass mailing prohibition that you had, I believe, commented on at the last hearing.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And I did read her letter, and that bill is still in flux. Last I met with Mr. Mendoza's staff, they were planning on submitting, planning on submitting pretty substantial amendments in the coming month to that bill, because I think they will even admit that it's still pretty uncooked.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have no further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No other questions. Thank you, Mr. Ong. Okay, so next item is 32, which is the executive staff reports. Commissioners, any questions for staff on the report? Commissioner Kasher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No comments from me on the report.
Thank you. Commissioner Wasserman?
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, the reports will be submitted. And unless there are any other questions or comments from the commissioners, I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Adaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasher,
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman,
Yes.
Chair Remke.
Yes, thank you.
This motion passes.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels. Bye.